have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Hashtag Michigan, Chicago, did you know? Hashtag Detroit, Canada, did you know? Hashtag Chicago, Virginia, Michigan, did you know? Hashtag Great Lakes Merchants. Hashtag Detroit, Canada Underground Code to Freedom. Hashtag Ancient America before Columbus. Was George de Baptiste any relation to Jean-Baptiste Pointe DuSable? Thinking face things that make you think and question everything. George de Baptiste. Occupation: barber, caterer. Political party: Republican Party. Known for Underground Railroad. Born c. 1815, Fredericksburg, Virginia, U.S. Died the 22nd of February 1875, Detroit, Michigan, United States. Ed Hamilton S. Bust of George de Baptiste. George de Baptiste, c. 1815, February 22, 1875, was a prominent conductor on the Underground Railroad in Indiana and Detroit, Michigan. In 1840, he served as valet and then White House steward for U.S. President William Henry Harrison. In the 1830s and 1840s, he was an active conductor in Madison, Indiana, on the Ohio River border with Kentucky, a slave state. He moved to Detroit, Michigan in 1846, where he was considered the president of the local Underground Railroad group. During this period, he purchased a steamboat for carrying fugitives to Canada. It is estimated that de Baptiste and close collaborator William Lambert secured passage of 30,000 slaves to Canada. In the late 1850s, de Baptiste worked with Frederick Douglass and John Brown. During the American Civil War, de Baptiste helped recruit black soldiers, and after the war he continued to work for civil rights. Early life. George de Baptiste was born in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Different sources give different parents. One source names John de Baptiste and Frances, Frankie, born slaves, but were free by the time of George's birth. Another gives George de Baptiste and Maria, George owning Maria until he set her free on March 12, 1823. A third source has him as a brother to noted Chicago minister, Richard de Baptiste, and son of a William and Eliza. George learned the barbering trade in Richmond, Virginia. In his mid-teens, he married Marie Lucinda Lee, a slave, and purchased her freedom. On January 22, 1835, George obtained a free movement pass for the state of Virginia in the office of Hustings in Richmond, Virginia, describing him as a mulatto boy, about 5 feet 7.5 inches high, and about 20 years of age, who was born free. He later said he used the certificate 33 times to help slaves escape. Moved to Madison, Indiana. De Baptiste moved to Madison, Indiana while still young, and around 1836 invested in businesses and harbored black fugitives as a conductor in the Underground Railroad. Madison is on the Ohio River, bordering Kentucky, a slave state, and sits nearly halfway between Cincinnati and Louisville. De Baptiste's ring included Dr. Samuel Tibbers in Madison and William Beard, a Quaker, in Salem, Indiana in Union County. Catherine White Coffin and Levi Coffin were the superintendents of the ring and arranged relays to Canada. In February 1840, de Baptiste, Seymour Finney, and William Lambert arranged the noted rescue of Robert Cromwell from a Detroit courthouse. Valet to William Henry Harrison. Before his election to U.S. President, William Henry Harrison was living in nearby North Bend, Ohio. De Baptiste became his valet during his campaign, and when Harrison was elected president, he became White House steward. Harrison's term was the shortest ever presidency, as he died of illness after 1 month in office. De Baptiste had become very close with the president and was a caretaker of the man during his illness. In an obituary of de Baptiste, it was written that at Harrison's death, de Baptiste was at his side and held the president in his arms at his last breath. After Harrison's death, de Baptiste returned to Madison, where his barbershop became the nerve center of the Madison, Indiana Underground Railroad. Fugitives along the Ohio River. He was still in Madison in 1843 when he conducted Adam and Sarah Crosswhite and their 4 children to freedom. He was there again when the Crosswhites crossed the Detroit River into Canada in 1847. About this time, de Baptiste, Lambert, and Coffin began working with George J. Reynolds. In 1846, de Baptiste was still working along the Ohio River, ferrying Kentucky runaways across to Ohio and Indiana and then to Michigan and Ontario. One frequent technique was to loan his own freedom papers to other men of similar height and build. Slavery supporters demanded his arrest for the non-payment of a $500 bond required be paid by free blacks until Judge Stephen C. Stevens declared that law unconstitutional. DeBaptiste was repeatedly attacked in Madison for his anti-slavery work, and he was forced to leave town. Moved to Detroit, Michigan. At the age 34, in 1846, he moved to Detroit where he continued to work as a barber and also sold clothes at Robert Banks's store. DeBaptiste began to work more closely with his former comrade, William Lambert. They were both members of the Order of Men of Oppression and the Order of Emancipation, groups which fought slavery and raised money to aid fugitives. In Detroit, DeBaptiste was considered to be the president of the Detroit Underground Railroad, William Lambert the vice president, or secretary, and Laura Haviland the superintendent. Henry Bibb was another important figure in the group. George's relative and possibly brother, Richard DeBaptiste, moved to Detroit from Virginia in 1846 and worked with George there, and in the 1850s in Ohio. In 1848, DeBaptiste took work as steward on the steamship, Arrow, which traveled between Sandusky, Ohio and Detroit. In 1859, together with William Whipper, DeBaptiste purchased a lake steamship, the T. Whitney. He could not hold a captain's license, so he had to hire a white captain by the name of Atwood. The boat ran a similar route to the Arrow, stopping at Amherstburg, Ontario, Canada to load up on lumber and, presumably, to offload fugitives. Samuel C. Watson worked on the boat as a clerk and part manager. DeBaptiste activism extended much further than working as a conductor. He was an occasional correspondent to various anti-slavery journals, including the North Star and the Liberator. He also played a role in the larger national abolitionism movement. On Mach 12, 1859, John Brown, Frederick Douglass, William Lambert, and DeBaptiste met at William Webb's house to discuss emancipation. DeBaptiste proposed that conspirators blow up some of the South's largest churches. The suggestion was opposed by Brown, who felt humanity precluded such unnecessary bloodshed. Before emancipation, DeBaptiste had a $1,000 reward for his head in Kentucky. Senator James Murray Mason was the head of the investigating committee against Brown. After Brown's insurrection, capture, and hanging, Mason attempted to subpoena John DeBaptiste, later changed to George DeBaptiste, and probably the same George. The Detroit sheriff tasked with serving the warrant wrote to the committee, "Knowing the cast and character of DeBaptiste, my first impression on receiving the summons was that if Senator Mason knew the facts he would not desire the summons to be served, even if I should find DeBaptiste here. If DeBaptiste were summoned, there is not probability that he would obey, and the summons was never served." Civil War and after. During the American Civil War, DeBaptiste worked with Detroit civil rights activist John D. Richards in recruiting Michigan's 1st Black Regiment. He also served as a sutler. After the war, in the late 1860s, DeBaptiste worked with the Freedmen's Bureau. He also opened a catering business in Detroit and even won first prize for his wedding cakes in the 1873 Michigan State Fair. He advocated for the right of black students to attend Detroit public schools, and was a member of Second Baptist Church in Detroit. In 1870, he became the first black to be elected delegate to the state Republican nominating convention. Death. DeBaptiste died February 22, 1875. He was survived by his second wife, one son, and one daughter.